of you guys on Patreon have been telling me that you have been noticing that things are getting a little haywire insofar as pricing is concerned in the United States. And you've mentioned the fact that the official inflation numbers seem to be fairly moderate, whereas, what seems to be actually going on is a lot more severe in terms of pricing. Gasoline is going up. Raw materials are going up. I mean, like a 2x4 is coming up on $10 each. $10 for a 2x4, for crying out loud. I mean, what the hell is going on? Well, let me explain. Simply put, they have printed a shit ton of money, a fuck ton of money over the past year. Ever since COVID happened and the lockdown and all these companies that basically shut down, but they're essential for the economy, like for instance, airlines, right? You can't have airlines going broke. You have to maintain them. So the government has been putting them on life support. And, the stimulus checks and all the rest of it. See, basically paying people to be idle during this pandemic, which has been a catastrophic economic decision, but, spilt milk. That's irrelevant. The point is that in order to keep all these companies on life support, to keep all the people fed and clothed and housed, the U.S. federal government printed up a fuck ton of money. And this money printing, it's now that the economy is slowly starting to get back in gear, all of a sudden, all this money sloshing around in the system, a third more than pre-March 2020, huh? I mean, that's how much they printed. Well, all this money is starting to reflect itself in prices of raw material, prices of gasoline, and, everything is slowly rising. Now, you've probably seen this in other sexier asset classes. I mean, like, for instance, cryptocurrencies, right? Bitcoin is hitting $60,000 a pop. Houses, like a 1,500 square foot house, which is no big deal, right? It's going for $1 million. I mean, what the hell is going on, right? Well, what's going on is very simple. You see, the people who are smarter, who have more cash, they're not stupid. I mean, people who are richer, i.e. have more cash, they got there for a reason. They might not be the sharpest knife in the drawer, but they've got a certain cunning. And they realize that all of this cash sloshing around, well, with all this cash, they got to go and put it somewhere. And so they have put it into cryptos, into properties, into any solid or semi-solid asset class. And that's why these asset classes have been rising. Yeah, they were rising before consumables. Consumables, i.e. gasoline, lumber, etc. And so these asset classes have been rising because all of this cash sloshing around. Because a lot of rich people, and frankly myself included, have realized that the smart thing is to take all the cash you have and put it into some tangible asset. Because with all this money printing, the currency, the dollar, which has been the dominant currency for going on 70 years, and arguably since the 1920s, coming up on a century even, well, it's teetering. It's teetering, it's on the brink of the abyss. And this has rich people, people with cash, extremely nervous. And so that's why they've been going into asset classes, tangible assets. Now, the weird thing is that gold and silver have not been rising commensurate to the other asset classes, like cryptos, like property. And people have been wondering about that, myself included. Now, you can go off a cliff insofar as conspiracy theories are concerned about the prices of gold and silver. They don't make any rational sense. And it's known that in the past, the gold market and the silver market have been manipulated by major players. In the past, they were private players. But it could very well be that the central banks in the United States and in Europe and the Bank of Japan, well, they might be manipulating gold and gold prices. After all, those three central banks have dominant position insofar as the gold market and the silver market too, to a lesser extent, but the gold market for sure. So it could very well be that they have been manipulating those prices so as to maintain the illusion that everything is going well, even as prices for consumables are rising, even as the prices of real estates and other tangible assets and other stores of value like cryptos have been rising. But that kind of speculation about manipulation and crap like that, well, we're not going to know. Okay, we're not going to know now, at least. Perhaps in 10, 20 years it'll come out, but right now we don't know, and so it's pointless to speculate. What we have to be thinking about now is how to handle hyperinflation of the dollar if and when it comes. Now, for various reasons, I have been thinking that the dollar was going to hyperinflate for going on 10 years, man. Okay, so it could be that I am, the busted clock that's right twice a day. Okay? So on this issue, insofar as hyperinflation, you should not take my word for it. You should listen to what I have to say, but make up your own mind and listen to other people who are talking about the same thing. Because it's very noticeable that prices are rising. But like I said, I have been thinking that the dollar was going to hyperinflate since 2010. I wrote a big essay that appeared on Zero Hedge. It was the second most read essay in 2010 on Zero Hedge, which is a big deal. Like something like 500,000 people read it between Zero Hedge and Business Insider and whatnot. And my thinking was that there would be a run on treasury bonds, and that people would exit treasury bonds and go into commodities, and this would cause hyperinflation. That was the crux of my argument. But of course, that didn't happen. However, with this unprecedented money printing, it has nothing to do with the collapse in confidence of the treasury bonds, and has everything to do with the fact that there is just so much cash sloshing around. And now that the economy is starting up again, that cash has to go somewhere. And it's going somewhere, into consumables. And pretty soon it's going to start hitting food supplies, because already the prices of corn and soy are rising precipitously. And so the issue becomes what to do to protect yourself from hyperinflation, and more to the point, what to do to take advantage of hyperinflation. Who fears inflation more than anyone? Who fears hyperinflation more than anyone? Think about it. It's a simple question. See, who is the person who would fear hyperinflation the most? And if you think about it a little bit, you realize it would be lenders. Yeah, of course. You see, if I lend you $100 today, and there is, say, for the sake of argument, 30% inflation in a year, well, when you pay me back in a year's time, you pay me back with a bill that says $10, but the purchasing power of that $10 bill has decreased by 30%. What I could get for $10 today is not what I can get for $10 in a year's time. In a year's time, if there's a 30% yearly inflation rate, and this is just hypothetical, it's decreased by 30%, say that today I could buy, just for the sake of argument, I could buy 4 cups of coffee, right? In a year's time, I'm only going to be able to buy, barely 3 cups of coffee. You see, if there's a 30% drop in the purchasing power of the dollar in a year's time. And you see, the person who lent money is the person who suffers with hyperinflation. And of course, on the flip side of that, the person who benefits from high inflation or hyperinflation is a debtor. You who owe money, well, your debt today is going to be worth less tomorrow, because of inflation or high inflation or hyperinflation. If there is a 30% drop in the value of the currency between today and a year's time, your debt dropped off by 30%. Nominally, it maintains the same. It's the same amount of debt. Nominally, I mean in terms of the actual number value that you have to pay back. But in terms of purchasing power, it will have dropped. You are listening to me, you realize where this is going. See, the smart play right now is to get into debt, into as much debt as possible. Get into debt and use that debt to buy tangible assets that aren't going to go anywhere. Property. Now, the problem with doing this play is that right now, because of the COVID pandemic, people are realizing that they don't need to live in the big cities. They can work remotely. And a lot of companies are realizing that they don't need to spend a shit ton of money on an office in downtown Manhattan. No, they can essentially outsource the offices to the homes of their workers, which is what they're doing. A lot of them are doing that, right? And they are shrinking their offices. I mean, they used to rent out, say, 10,000 square feet in Midtown Manhattan, and now they're realizing that they can get away with renting out maybe, say, 2,000 square feet in Midtown Manhattan. They're dropping the amount of rent that they're paying by 80%, and they're outsourcing the offices to the homes of their workers because all their workers are telecommuting, right? And so the issue is, of course, see, if you want to buy property, you got to know where you're going to buy it. You got to know for sure that it's still going to be valuable, because the big cities, it's clear that the future, it's not going to be a happy ending insofar as the future for the big cities. But these small to medium-sized cities that have high quality of life, that's where people are going. That's the future. And that is where you can save yourself and potentially make a shit ton of money from hyperinflation. Yeah, take a city like Savannah, Georgia. I'm just taking it out of a hat, you know. Savannah, Georgia, as I understand it, is like a very nice city. You know, it's very pleasant, good quality of life, blah, blah, blah. And it has all the internet infrastructure for telecommuting and all that crap, right? And so people are moving there. The same with Austin, Texas. The same with a whole bunch of different places. I mean, you can research it yourself. But the point, see, people are moving there because they have a good quality of life. They have all the amenities necessary for telecommuting, right? And so properties there are going to be valuable. Home prices, apartments, townhomes, not offices, because like I explained before, telecommuting has not happened. But see, houses, co-ops, condominiums, those kinds of property, they're going to do very well. And so, if you want to protect yourself from hyperinflation, it would seem to me, you would go into debt to buy these properties and put as little down payment as possible and finance as much as possible, with the idea that if there is hyperinflation, the hyperinflation, that is the devaluation of the dollar, will kill your debt. It will make it so much smaller and you'll be able to service it. See, remember, when you purchase a property, why do you purchase property? You purchase it to either live in it yourself or, if you're smart, you rent it out. That's the point. But see, you can readjust the rental that you're charging your tenants. The income can rise from that rental property because of inflation. But see, if you structure your mortgage properly and make sure that it does not have an adjustable interest rate, that it's a fixed mortgage, even if initially you have to pay a higher interest rate, but it's a fixed payment no matter what, and it's never adjusted for inflation and never adjusted for interest rates, well, then see, what happens is that over time, your rent rises, but the mortgage payment stays the same. And as the rent rises, you make more and more money, even as the bank that holds that mortgage, they're the ones who lose, and you're the one who wins. See, I come from Chile, and Chile had hyperinflation back in the 70s because of the socialist government, right? And so because of it, a lot of people made this play, and a lot of banks went bankrupt because of it. You know, people weren't stupid. They saw what was coming. They saw, yearly 100 and 130% inflation rate, and so they went into debt, loaded up to the gills in debt, and bought these properties. And then, as the currency just decreased, they just kept on raising the rental price. And they made out like bandits. Yeah, it was a great play for them, to the point that in Chile what happened was that they decided to do away with fixed payment, and they priced everything in these adjustable, inflation-adjustable units, okay? And so that play in Chile is gone. But in the rest of the world, in the United States, where they haven't experienced this kind of hyperinflation yet, you could do that. You could make potentially a shit ton of money. You could wind up having, say, a property where you're paying, for instance, $1,000 a month for the mortgage and renting it out for $1,000. But because of, say, 50% inflation, you wind up raising the rents to $1,500. In nominal terms, it will have risen. In purchasing power, it will have stayed the same. But the mortgage will have decreased because it was fixed. And that's the key issue. If you do this play, you have to make sure that your payment, your mortgage payment, is fixed no matter what. Yeah, because if it's an adjustable rate, it'll rise. It'll rise with inflation and you'll be fucked, okay? And so you got to be clever here, okay? And of course, what you want to do is to go into as much debt as possible, see? I mean, essentially what you're doing is you're shorting the currency. You're assuming that the dollar will have less value in the future. And so the issue becomes, what's the time window? How far ahead in the future will the dollar decrease in value? This is a hard question to answer, but history helps us. See, in most economies where the government, for whatever reason, has gone on this money printing spree, like in Chile in 1970, like in Weimar Germany in 1922, like in Venezuela in 2016, and all these countries that have cratered their economies by screwing over their currency, right? It always took between 18 months and 2 years. That's how long it took between the time that the money started really getting printed and hyperinflation started rearing its ugly head. Because there was a period of time after they had set off the money printing and hyperinflation hit. Well, there was a period of time where things seemed to be okay. And there were like little hints here and there that there was inflation and hyperinflation on the way, but not many hints, like now. There are a few hints here and there, but not a hell of a lot is happening, and people seem to be like, some of the more thoughtful people are realizing that this is coming, but for the most part, people are like, oh man, gasoline is going up, it must be because of Biden or whatever the fuck. They're not thinking that the currency, the dollar, the US dollar, is about to crater. You see? They're not realizing that, because we're in that period, that calm before the storm. But once that storm hits, i.e. once the hyperinflation curve goes up and up and up and up and up, then it'll be too late. Because when that starts to happen, lenders are going to realize what's coming, and they're not going to want to lend, or they're going to want to lend at exorbitant interest rates. And of course, negating the play, see? So you got to act soon. But the caveat, as always, I am not a financial advisor. I'm just giving you my perspective. And I could be totally wrong. I've been wrong lots of times before. You guys know that, yeah? I mean, when the whole COVID thing happened, I thought that this shit would be like fucking, airborne Ebola. And what happened? Well, it turned out to be nothing much. Big old nothing burger, though a lot of people got all hysterical. I mean, the cure has been far worse than the disease now, hasn't it? But anyway, that's not important. The important thing is now, the now, okay? And whether you think that I'm totally off my rocker or not, see, I've said it before, especially if you're young, the smart thing to gain actual wealth, to have enough money to take care of the old man you will become. I've done webinars about this issue. Well, the smart thing is to go into property. To go into property, income-producing properties. Income-producing properties that can pay for themselves. You put as small a down payment as possible, get a mortgage to finance the rest, and pay that mortgage by renting out that property. That's the smartest way to accumulate capital over time. And if you believe that there's going to be hyperinflation, it is the smartest play, because you'll get the bank to pay for it. Inflation will, eat away at the debt. And if there is no hyperinflation, if the dollar is steady as a rock, which I do not think will happen, but suppose I'm wrong, like I've been before, well, even if I'm completely wrong, it's still a smart play. See? Because if you get a 20 or 30-year mortgage, in 20 or 30 years, you'll own outright some income-producing property that you can rent out and take care of you in your old age. So this play, whatever way you look at it, is the smart play. You think that hyperinflation is going to happen? Do this. You don't think it's going to happen? Do it anyway. Because either way you win. Either way you take care of the old man that you're going to become. This is your priority, okay? Nobody is going to take care of you in the future. You You're young now. Now you have to be thinking about the old man you will become, because when you are 60, 70, 80, no one is going to take care of you. Your Social Security check is going to be worthless. You can wipe your ass with it. Nobody will take care of you except you now.